my daddy's make it hurt.
sing that shit.
Hello and welcome to Funvocacy Part 3. My name is Kanav Rishikumar. I'd like to welcome you all to AVI's Funvocacy stream number 3. In stream 1, we told you that we're clueless and we have no idea what we're doing. In stream 2, we made up words like Funvocacy. And in stream 3, we finally have somebody who's going to help us explain to you what the hell we are doing. Right or wrong, we don't know yet. But we will find out today because we have with us the AVI board members, quite a few of them once again. Joining us today is going to be Juggy, who's eternally chirpy, happy, and wavy. We've got Samrat, the big scary one. Samrat, scare everyone now. Okay, Samrat's doing the silent scare, so you're probably not going to see him. We've also got with us today Dhaval. Dhaval, you want to give everyone a wave?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Oh, Juggy did the mute wave. Samrat did not do a wave at all. So we're kind of confused about who's doing what today. We've got Manish. Manish, you're on mute. I've decided I have to give you guys a heads up so that you guys.
Hi, everyone.
Nice, Manish. Thank you so much. And finally, we've got Prateek with us today, and we've got Mridul. Prateek, Mridul, please.
Hi guys, Prateek Gupta here. So I've been here with AVI since a very long time, but have been very inactive in the past couple of months. And finally, due to this lockdown, I finally have found some time to spare and give AVI another shot and to help us achieve the unbanning of the vapes in India. Hopefully. God bless everyone.
With Prateek's confession that he's been inactive, we know he's been a bad boy. And we do bad things to bad boys. But we'll get back to that later. Mridul, you guys have met Mridul before, and once again, Mridul's here today. He's going to be speaking. We're going to be annoying him today. And behind the scenes, just for the record, in case those of you who do not know, we also have Arun. He's the one behind all the fancy music and the screens which you see, and behind a lot of the back end which is happening and hosting all of this for us today. So a silent applaud from Samrat because you guys didn't see him because he's still on mute. So the chief guest for today is going to be Pingal Khan. Pingal is an advocate with more than a decade in practice. He is the co-founder of a full-service national firm, Ashlar Law, with offices in Bangalore, Mumbai, and Kolkata. He and his firm have been associated with AVI from its inception in its advisory and representative capacity. Pingal, please take the show over for a while.
Sorry for such a wordy introduction that you just read out. I mean, that's advisory and representative capacity, but yeah, I mean, law. So there's going to be a lot of words there.
We're all prepared for it, Pingal. Don't worry. Bring on all the words. But before you bring on the words, I'm so sorry, Pingal. I'm so sorry. But I've always wanted to ask a lawyer this, and usually they're just so expensive. Their time is so expensive that I can't ask them this. So with AVI handling all of today's nonsense for me, I want to ask you a question which I don't get to ask other lawyers. And this is important. तीतर के आगे तीतर, तीतर के पीछे तीतर, आगे तीतर पीछे तीतर, बोलो कितने तीतर?
I don't know. Do तीतर?
No, Pingal, there are 3 teethers. This is, if I give you 5 minutes, you'll convince everyone 2 teether. I know that. That's what lawyers do. Right. So, Pingal, today's show, jokes apart, we wanted to start with a very, very interesting question which has been asked to us in the first stream, in the second stream, which has been asked to us off streams, which has been asked to us repeatedly again and again, and everyone is asking non-stop. The vaping situation in India is complicated as of today. The government tells us vaping is banned, then the government says that sometimes you can use vaping, but then they say you can't carry it in a plane. With all this confusion and mixed signals the government is giving, what is the situation? Can a person use vapes in India or not? Is it banned or is it allowed? Are we allowed to carry it or are we not allowed to carry it? So what? Can you brief us, explain to us, or simplify it for us?
Right. So I'll first answer this in very short, and I mean keep it very brief with the basic answer, and then we get into explanations and qualifications and all of that. So what is the status of vaping in India? Per se, vaping, as in the act of using a vape, is allowed. There is no ban on the act of using a vape. So user can continue vaping. There is a ban or a prohibition with punishments and penalties on manufacture, production, stocking up, sales, distribution, import, export, etc. So basically, any commercial activity related to vaping is disallowed, prohibited with penalty and even imprisonment. Besides that, there is a DGCA notification which also bans carrying vape devices in aircrafts. We will explain later the legality of it, how it has come about and everything. But as of today, that notification does stand. It is there. And it is pending challenges before courts. And there are legality related questions and concerns about that notification. We can get to that, as we proceed. But right now, these are the two clear positions. One, there is a DGCA ban on carrying vape devices in aircraft. And two, a user of vape can continue using it at his personal level. However, a trade or a commercial activity related to vaping, and I'm trying to use it as a broad term, is prohibited.
Pingal, as a follow-up question to what Kanav just asked. Now, storage for my personal use. How much is okay? How much is not okay? Because honestly, I plan for doomsday scenario. Okay, and so sometimes I am worried whether I have stocked. My stock levels are okay for myself, or would it be considered as something for trade? And so, is there any qualification for how much I can store for personal use?
No. So this is one of the problems that we have faced with the act. First and foremost, typically, when an act comes in, an act not always brings out thresholds in itself, in the draft of the act itself. However, it empowers authorities to then come up with thresholds, which are normally brought about through rules or notifications. In this case, none of that has happened. So the statute ends up by saying you cannot stock. It doesn't go on to say what would constitute stock. What is the threshold? If a person has more than 3 devices, is that stocking? If a person has more than 8 vials of the fluid, is that stocking? We don't know. So that is the one issue that we have. And when we deal with what happens in the event you have been you're being inspected or the product is seized, is something where I can address how to go about maybe handling something like that. But right now, there are no defined thresholds for what amounts to stock.
To which, Pingal, I wanted to ask, for example, that Goa, that person who was hauled up to the police station for having just 4 vape devices. Now, what is the remedy for a person like that? That if you get harassed, because since there is nothing which defines what is okay, then they can define it the way they want.
Right. So there are 2-3 things, right? I mean, first, I would, and I know in my experience that this is a very scary thing to say when actually to hear for a layman. But the fact remains that you cannot do much with regards to when the cops come calling, except that insist on a seizure receipt that this is what has been seized and this is the ground. And then wait for the next day when you're produced before the magistrate in the event the officials decide to arrest you for the night and keep you in the lockup. First and foremost, the statute comes under the CRPC and obviously the constitutions, and it also clearly states that you will have to produce the person concerned, the accused, in the next morning before the first class magistrate. At that time, you typically get a bail because these are not non-bailable offenses and that wouldn't be a concern. What would normally happen is thereafter, if a trial begins, then you will have to prove that the intent was that you were not trying to sell. The advantage there is the general criminal jurisprudence, which you remember forces the authorities to make the case that the stock that you had was intended for sale. It is not actually your burden to prove otherwise. And that is an inherent legal system advantage we have, that it's beyond reasonable doubt. You have to be proven guilty. And so you have to prove intent, which is where, other activities comes in. I mean, I think what would end up happening is your social media activity will be looked into, your activities with regards to your WhatsApp messages, because all these things can be sourced through warrants by the authorities. And there they can find out if you have been promoting, advertising, selling these devices and all of that, and that could get you into trouble. But this is how you have to go about it. Now, with a person who has 4 of these devices, you would likely be able to prove that's for your personal use. And if it's for 20, then that could become difficult to begin with. There you have put your...
Jaggi, are you listening? Jaggi?
But like I said, there is no threshold. So Jaggi could get around and say, hey, you have not given me a threshold. I am who believes in apocalypse. I am the US president. I have a room to save myself. And I have...
Yeah, see, the thing, Pingal, I think is that as the situation progresses, not just the legal system, but the administration will also learn a little more about the vaping as a habit. What people do, how they vape, what is the consumer behavior around these products. Now, there are some people who like to collect devices. They're hobbyists. You can't call them sellers, but I think that you made an important point that the owners to prove that you had these devices in your possession to sell is with the cops or the government. And I think that is a key point, because that, in case you are not, and there is nothing in your history of you soliciting or trying to sell, then that will be very difficult for them to prove. So it may eventually be a source of harassment more than anything else.
See, some are hobbyists, some are retards like me, okay? And so I think they're also there. There should be a distinction there. I'm a retard, okay? And I buy, and then I have a panic attack, and then I buy a second one to keep for spare. And then I'm like, what about the second if something goes wrong? And I buy a third for something I like. And so I end up doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's that's suddenly very scary. Thank God I don't have these on display now. Okay. No, but that was only a poster, right? So I think I'm okay.
Guys, if I can quickly draw your attention to something that would possibly, allay your fears a little bit more, that would be Section 10 of the Prohibitory Act, the statute that prohibits the e-cigarettes. And it basically says, after completion of the proceedings before the court, and if it is proved that this stock seized by the authorized officer under the provision of this act are stocks of electronic cigarettes, such stocks shall be disposed of in accordance with provisions contained. So similarly, while this is only talking about the seizure and the way the seized goods will be disposed of, it must be kept in mind that with regards to even your innocence or your guilt, it is going to be a matter of proof, and the state will have to do so. Now, the rest is obviously for you to trust our system and its famous time-taking methods, that from the time the things are seized, by the time you will actually get out with this trial, it would take about 4 or 5 years, if you're lucky. But you will not be in jail. You will be roaming about freely. It's not that big an offense.
So it's a tool for harassment if they wanted to use, but it's not going to actually lead to convictions.
No.
My bigger fear is for 4 or 5 years that I won't have vapes, So I got to start keeping them in 2-3 locations.
Also remember, Jaggi, as long as the seized items are proved to be vapes, even if you get away by the fact that you were stocking it for your personal use, those vapes, those are going to be disposed of, because that part they're very clear that as long as it has been proved to be vapes.
Okay.
Not whether it has been stocked for sale.
Proof for it to be sold, right?
No, proof to be vaping device. The language I just read out, proof to be vaping device. So for the purpose of seizure and disposal, it is about proving that it was a vaping device.
I have some seriously priceless stuff out here. Okay. Okay. This is getting scarier. Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah,
we need some humor, man. This is suddenly very scary. I need some humor very quick.
Jaggi, I'll send you my address. You can ship them to me.
Yeah, right.
On humor front, somebody asked on Facebook, if I dismantle my device, does that come under the ends ban? No, that's just ending your device if you completely dismantle it into its components. It's the end of your device, but it's not under the ends band. The ends band doesn't say anything about dismantling or remantling or reassembling or disintegrating your device whatsoever. No. Am I right, Pingal?
Yes, it doesn't. It doesn't say anything like that. It doesn't say it has to be a complete device. Yes, if you dismantle it, it is possible, like the clause we were discussing with Jaggi, which is section 10, that under section 10, after the trial is over, nobody will be able to prove they were electronic cigarettes. And you may get away with it, but then you'll have to again put it all together. And I don't know whether that is possible, as in, I have no idea. And also remember, this would possibly be good 5 years after you were first, the goods were first seized from you. So, will they even be of any use? I doubt it.
Probably not. By then, I don't think it would probably matter also. Hopefully, by then, we would have made some headway and things would be a lot better in our country.
I'm right now only speaking on what the law is here today, man, of course.
Yes, we all are over here for that only today. But let's just quickly add some more disaster to everything. And, I want to do something wrong so that later on I can be blamed by most people over here and be told that, why did you do this? You should not have done this. This is so inappropriate. You should have read the rules. But in current affairs, we've got COVID-19 still devastating half the world, and it's a very upsetting and depressing scenario. But hopefully there'll be light soon. And while the COVID-19 situation is going on and the world is dealing with it, WHO has gone on to say that, tobacco harm reduction is bad, and they've been slamming it down. I really think WHO should, stick to being wrong about pandemics and restrict their being wrong to only pandemics for now. They've done enough damage. I don't think they need to expand the fields in which they are wrong.
Having said that,
appropriate to say something like this.
Yeah, Kanav, but having said that, keep in mind that from next month, India becomes the chair of the WTO and joins the executive committee. So highly unlikely that the government of India will go against the WHO directive, WHO understanding on a subject. So what WHO ends up saying over the course of the next 2-3 years may be critical to at least major developing countries taking their policy direction. I do not see any of the developed suo moto, sui generis, and without some kind of a guidance from WHO.
Right.
Yeah, but there are a couple of things, Kindle. One is that WHO is increasingly making itself less credible by making these what you would call them more activist kind of statements rather than anything which is linked to evidence or research. While the research is pointing in the other direction, WHO is just going on and beating the same drum. Now,
yeah.
So when WHO is already under a lot of fire, is losing a lot of credibility, as Kana pointed out on the pandemic itself. When it starts to further dig its grave by just making really unscientific statements, they are still harping on teen vaping when there is enormous amount of data that non-smoking teens, the prevalence of vaping in non-smoking teens is abysmally low. It's so low that you would not base your entire policy on just that one fact. They keep using these US figures, without the caveats that in US they're recording data on ever use. So the question asked to that population, that teen population, is: have you ever used or touched or puffed on an e-cigarette? If they say yes, they are considered users. That experimentation is high in that age group. When you start recording it as users of e-cigarettes, obviously you're going to get twisted data. In UK, they don't do that, and that's why you don't have that kind of paranoid figures. So there's a lot of misinformation and blatant misinformation coming out of WHO, and people are beginning to see that, I think.
That hesitation from Samrat, which you saw in the end where he started fumbling with his words, was him reading the message which said he has to stop talking his monologue.
Okay.
Because I was going to blow this whistle.
But Samrat, you raised an interesting point. Samrat, you raised an interesting point on the WHO bit. Now, I really can't speak on the relevance of a study and everything, but if I could refer you to something I'm sure you've already seen, an episode, I think yesterday, of an eminent journalist explaining the WHO situation. See, most multilateral bodies end up with project-specific funding, and that is something that needs to be looked into. That if multilateral international bodies take project-specific funding, then sometimes the view they're letting out could be colored, or could, I'm not necessarily saying biased, but it could have a predetermined policy direction that comes as some kind of an understanding with the funds. And these are issues that obviously I think in a post-COVID world, people will address. My concern, and I have said this before at various fora, and you would know that, is that e-cigarettes may not be one of the first things that developing countries would look into, because there are two problems here. One, it's smoking, it's tobacco, so it's a kind of taboo. It's not a policy, what can I say, priority from a promotional perspective. And two is that it is somehow viewed to be an elite solution to smoking, even where it is admitted to be an alternate harm reduction tool. So these are two things that I think together is what has hampered advocacy of e-cigarettes in developing nations.
Sure. Pingal, those are valid points. I would, I think what will happen in the future is some demonstration that e-cigarettes can work for the lower end of the economic spectrum. Like, for example, when it can be on, they have banned e-cigarette research in our country. But there still can be some research which can be coming out. For example, there was a recent paper published of 3,000 vapers in India. And if more work like this starts coming out, I think more people would be convinced of their harm reduction potential. So while it's a tough way ahead and there are a lot of challenges, I think if we kept trying and kept pushing, there are some gains to be had. There are countries who are taking like really prohibitionist stand, like there's Canada, there's UAE, there's Maldives, who banned, but then they reverse their positions 2 years down the line. So it can also happen in India.
No, sure, it can. I mean, there has to be a body of medical work that starts bringing out the advantages against conventional smoking cigarettes and bidis. I think that is one critical element that will have to come out. And until then, though, it is difficult to convince, especially governments which are losing so many people to cancer every year, to look any other way, which is the irony, because I think this is a better solution. But Samrat, I think you're on mute, Samrat.
No, Samrat is playing Damshraj. He's a big fan of the game. He's been playing it with us quite often.
Actually, he had a test with Mridul to see if Mridul could lip read.
I was about to bring that up. Pratik, Dhaval, Mridul, just for the record, the three of you we've changed to everyone visible screen. I don't know what it's called. It's a screen where everyone's tiny little videos are visible, so that everyone's visible. So you guys, feel free to join in, enact, act, and play Damsharaj with Samrat, if nothing else, for the time being. So I have a question. I'm going to direct it towards Pratik. Pratik, in light of everything which Pingal has pointed out and everything and all, can we carry mods, tanks, atomizers, batteries, and e-liquids in aircraft? Since you travel so much, I thought you're the right person to ask this.
Absolutely.
See, to sum it up in a very short sentence, it is against the law. The law states that you cannot travel with any component of electronic cigarette, even if it's for personal consumption. But you still hear stories that people try to sneak it in. Let me remind everyone watching this that it's not the right thing to do. And in case you get caught, it's going to land you in a lot of trouble, and you might even end up missing your flight.
Right. So to sum it up, no, don't travel with your vape mods and flights at all, or them separated. It's a big risk you're taking. It might get seized if it's identified. You might get lucky. It might get through. But our official stand is don't break the law. If the law says don't fly with it, don't fly with it. Dismantled or assembled. We are big fans of the law. Follow the law. Don't break the law. We're going to show you what we do to bad people later on when we grab hold of Pratik for being a bad boy. That's it. Another question Rahul has asked us. France is trying to study if nicotine. Sorry, yeah.
I would like to add that while we are big fans of the law and we encourage everybody to follow the law, we are also believers that the law, if you think it is unjust, we should fight to get it changed. So if you think any of the laws are wrong, which in this case we are all in the same boat, we think that vaping ban is wrong, and the vaping ban on flights is absolutely wrong. So AVI is fighting these unjust laws, and you should join us, help us, support us in this fight.
Absolutely.
There's one possible remedy which is within the framework of the law, I think. Pingal, please weigh in on this. Is that if you can courier your device to your destination a day in advance or through a overnight courier, that is not breaking any law. Then you're not taking it in the flight. At the same time, you'll have it at your destination. Not everyone can do it, but if it is possible, it is something that can be tried. What do you think, Pingal? That would not be breaking any law, right?
It won't be breaking any law for sure, because the Aircraft Act under which the DGCA has issued this notification is very specific and very limited in its powers. So it only is about either the security of India or safety of the aircraft, and under that the DGCA could have banned carrying of any devices or goods which could affect environment, health, security, etc. Now, when they use the word health, and this is the interesting part. So there is this word called health here, right? What DCA does in its wisdom is decides that if something is harmful to health, therefore cannot be in an aircraft. But that was not the idea. The idea was if something is harmful to the of the passengers in the flight. So if like carrying a weapon or carrying a poison or something like that. So this, because you have to read anything in context of the rest of the statute, and that has not been done very promptly. And again, I mean, this is something that in my completely neutral reading of the law is a little excessive application of powers given to the DCA under the Aircraft Act. I think they've gone beyond the powers that have been granted to them. They've gone beyond the objectives, and they may have acted in haste and, strange to use the word, almost like an activist, and not.
Pingal, just another follow-up question on what Samrat asked. Now, supposing I fly to a city, I'm not carrying my vape. Can I borrow a vape from somebody? Borrowing is not transactional, so can I do it? And similarly, if someone comes to my city and I lend him a vape to use for the interim period that he is in Hyderabad, would that be considered as trade? Because I'm only lending something to someone and I will take it back at the end of the person's stay in Hyderabad. Would that be considered to be transactional and possibly breaking the law? It shouldn't be, right?
No, it wouldn't be. Not right now. Not as the laws stand. But
right.
We're giving the government ideas right now. So, yeah.
Okay, I should have worn a lead helmet, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question from Rahul Bhagat, who is saying France is trying to study if nicotine can act as a blocker to the coronavirus receptors. Well, if it does work out like that, and if the study does come out to be true, then it's a win for the tobacco industry. It's a win for the vape industry, which might not be a very good win for the health industry globally in general. But if it gets us free from corona, it'll be nice. But it will definitely be bad for WHO. They'll just be like hitting
the nightmare.
3 shots of bad calls one after another, and they're kind of doing that. So let's keep following that story and see. We'll bring it up in the 4th advocacy stream, which we do, because we're very desperately looking for fun ideas to encourage you guys. On encouraging you guys, just a reminder, this is a stream where we encourage you to ask us questions, talk to us. And today we have a lawyer who is very up to date with the vaping situation in the country, because he's been working with AVI for so long. So ask your questions which are legal or legal related today. Pop them for Pingal so he can answer them for you and maybe guide you. There's been a question which has been asked, which has been answered, and it's being asked again. is if it is legal to carry vape devices in India. We're guessing you joined us late. Yes, it is legal to carry it for personal use, not for sales. Is there any suggestion or advice for people carrying their vape devices in transport daily, such as like the metro rail? Is it allowed? Yes, it is allowed. You can carry it. You can give it for the scan. It's not an issue. It's just like a mobile phone. You give it into wherever your electronic devices are being scanned. That's it.
I have a question for Pingal. Now, can I import trade in India is there and it's banned? We can't, local vendors can't buy or sell, rather whoever were vendors cannot sell anymore. But what if I import a product for my personal use and I'm able to, well, it'll be up to me to demonstrate that it's meant for personal use. But that being said, what would I be allowed to do it? As simple as that.
If I could draw your attention to section 4 of the statute, on and from the date of commencement of this act, no person shall directly or indirectly produce or manufacture or import or export or transport or sell or distribute electronic cigarettes, whether as a complete product or any part thereof. Does that answer your question?
Answers it up.
So that I guess it basically says I work with what I have. I can't get anything new, right?
Right. And Samrat, this also brings to the point that you may find certain courier companies who may not be willing to transport it either, because the act of couriering for them could amount to a commercial activity.
Right. So DJ Crab, I hope that answers your question. DJ Crab, answers your question that you cannot buy parts spares if you've broken your glass. We're sorry. Use Fevikwik, join it, put it back together somehow.
So Pingal, basically, I had another question: is if I am abroad and I happen to buy a device for personal use and get it back to India, so even that thing is banned. I technically can't even get a new device I bought abroad back into India on my person.
Technically, that is not import. You don't need an importer's license. But yes, the customs can stop you. They can interpret this and stop you, but you will have to take your chances with it. Having said that, since there is no other risk attached to it, with the maximum risk being that it will be seized when you're coming in, I wouldn't say it's a terrible idea to take a chance if you're coming back, to at least bring yourself a new device if you want to. Simply because it's not import, it's not being done on the IC mechanism. You are allowed to carry some things in. Yes, customs can stop you and they can say that, hey, there is nothing to check it on the duty. How do I harmonize this duty? And you'll have to take your chances and you could get seized. But otherwise, there is no other risk. And because personal usage is allowed, they can't take any criminal action against you just for the fact that you are bringing one piece home. But now if you bring 10 home, then people will assume, and there will at least be a ground for the official to make a prima facie conclusion, draw a prima facie conclusion that you are trying to bring it for business.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Pingal, one thing, what is electronic cigarette? How is it being defined? Is it the sum of its part? For example, is the wire which is used in electronic cigarette, is that an electronic cigarette? Is the battery an electronic cigarette? Is the tank an electronic, or when they come together, it's an electronic cigarette? Why I'm asking is that if I just carry a tank, with nothing about, no other paraphernalia, does that constitute, or is that labeled an electronic cigarette?
So an electronic cigarette is actually defined as a heat not burn product or an electronic nicotine delivery system, which is as a complete device in whatever shape or size. Now, the problem is, and this is not unique to electronic cigarettes. I'm sure Samrat, as a journalist, know about the SCOMET list, about things which can be dually used. Many things can be dually used. Much of what we use in modern day cell phone manufacturing also has a complete application in defense items. So the fact is, yes, you can possibly bring a wire back or bring a small component back or store them together in separate forms and claim that, hey, this is not an e-cigarette. And it would be quite difficult for anybody to prove it is an e-cigarette because each of those components on their own have a separate role. However, the liquids can play a vital role. The liquids can be then used as a corroborative evidence to show that this may have been the intent. So let us say I have six.
You know, that quick follow-up question there. Even with liquids, for example, if so, you know the components, right? PG, VG, nicotine, and flavorings. If all of these were separate, like if you want, see, for example, PG you can buy from any shop, VG you can buy from any shop. Flavorings are easily available. I mean, barring the nicotine part,
Right.
all the other things are goods which are used for so many other things.
Correct.
So would that be, you know, like if you had PG, VG, and flavorings separately, is that illiquid? I mean, by definition.
No.
Does it fall under the
by definition? They're not, because there is no way to say they will become illiquid. But you know, this is obviously something we will get to know when trials happen and we see how courts are looking at it. But since each one of them have a specific other use, it is going to be difficult to prove that the only intent was to make an illiquid. Again, everything comes down to the threshold, Samrat. I mean, if I'm living in a house and then they come in and see that I have all of these in massive piles, then, you know, the whole assumption changes. Having said that, it will still be very difficult.
See, I mean, all the questions we are asking from a consumer perspective, right? We are not asking these questions from a trader perspective.
No,
so you know, then a quick follow-up question, that if I bought PG, VG, and flavoring separately and mixed them at home.
Statute, it talks about manufacture, but it talks about manufacture in a certain context. See, like I told you before about the Aircraft Act, any statute has to be read together. And we, in this case, have to also read it in context with the Honorable Minister of Health, Union Minister of Health's tweet, and tweeted clarification, and later on even parliamentary clarification, where he has said that personal use is not being banned. So if personal use is not being banned, which means that the intent of the statute on even manufacturing element was entirely commercial and bulk related, in that case, it would be wise to say that you know, maybe a DIY does not amount to manufacturing with the meaning of the statute. Is it legal or illegal? I answer that question.
Pingal, I have a Pingal, to just interrupt you. I mean, I can make a pizza at home, okay, and I can buy a pizza from Pizza Hut or any one of these other guys. I don't need to declare or get a food manufacturing license or anything like that for me to make a pizza at home. So going with Samrat's corollary, on the same way, I mean, it's for my personal consumption. It's as simple as that.
Terrible, you know, these are terrible false comparison, because the pizza is not banned to begin with. There is no ban on even the commercial sale or the commercial making of pizza. So it's a completely false parallel. Having said that, like I said, a DIY, a do-it-yourself kit for an individual user should not, in my opinion, in qualifications provided by the legislators, amount to manufacturing under the statute, which means that it should not be a banned activity under the statute. If we read the statute in context and along with the clarifications provided by the government, if we take out the clarifications provided by the government, even in that case, we can say that the flavor of the statute, the design of the statute, is on commercial issues. It nowhere refers to the word use, except the nicotine part, which has its own separate issues in law.
See, Pingal, since you referred to the clarifications issued by the government, the health minister in parliament, which I believe is has some force of law,
yes.
How much do those count? I mean, because see, the bill itself is not saying anything about consumption being exempt. However, the health minister took a long time to explain to the parliament why consumption is not banned. What is the weight of that when it comes to legality?
It has a significant amount of weight for two reasons. One is because, in my opinion, the statute does have certain elements of ambiguity. Typically, legislative intent is one of the last places we go to when we are trying to interpret a statute. It is not necessarily the most important tool. However, when there is a lack of clarity in the text of the statute, which is there in this case, then the legislative intent becomes important. I was initially a little worried about the tendency of modern governments, and I'm not specifically saying just the Indian government, of tweeting clarifications, because I'm still not sure how that works in law. But the parliamentary statement does certainly have serious standing, and it will make a huge difference.
So it is safe to assume that consumption is not banned, even though it's not written in the bill.
First and foremost, anything that has to be banned has to be expressly banned. So the very fact that the word consumption is not in the statute means that it is not expressly banned. Remember, in our country, everything is allowed unless it is banned. We are not living in China. So it's not the other way around. You don't get concessions to do something. We have all our rights, and then the government has powers to restrict some rights for certain occasions. So in this case, because the word consumption has not been brought in the statute, and it could very well have been, read with also the other clarifications, I think it's very clear that consumption is not banned. And the reason why the government may have done that is to basically skirt around the issues of personal liberty. That is the primary reason the government would have done that. Whenever you have time, I'll quickly explain that part of the law, even if it's of interest to you guys, that why it is easier to ban manufacturing than curb personal use in Indian Constitution.
If it takes 2 minutes, why don't you tell us? I think a lot of people might be interested in knowing.
Right. So manufacturing or the right to trade is under Article 19 of the Constitution, which is where your freedom of speech and all of these are. And as we all know, as journalists, you most certainly know that government does have power to curb freedom of expression. We have banned books, we have banned movies, all of this. So similarly, the right of trade also comes under Article 19. And it is therefore subject to reasonable restrictions, health, morality, security, etc. Whereas the right to personal liberty comes under Article 21 of the Constitution, one of the core fundamental rights, which cannot now, after several judgments post the emergency experience, cannot even be abrogated during the course of another emergency. As in the next time, God forbid, if there is an emergency in this country, 21 will stand. 21 cannot be pulled away. Which is why it is easier for the government to go and push this as a manufacturing and commercial trading ban than to make this about an usage ban. Because a usage ban could then be argued as a violation of your personal liberty. And there are certain judgments of the court which may have led to this understanding. This would be my sense as to why the government very carefully kept the word consumption out of it, then rushed to clarify that consumption is not banned. If you ask me from a challenge of the statute point of view, this was bad. The clarification or the absence of the word consumption was bad, because that would have made the statute far easily challengeable.
This is the longest I've been in this kind of a stream without speaking. My God, Pingal, you can speak.
No. On a slightly silly note, I don't consume e-liquids. I vape e-liquids. So
those are all consumptions. Those are all consumptions.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask.
Consumption is a broader umbrella verb.
Okay. Well,
Jackie, did you? Yeah, Jackie, did you think this was a grammar class and not a law class?
Honest to God, and when Pingal will correct me, law is all about grammar, okay? You miss your semicolon, you have lost your goddamn case, right? Yeah, exactly. And hence it needed to be asked.
Mushib Mirza has a question which goes like, my quick question: what if a friend is bringing flavorless liquid with nicotine from abroad? What are the chances it will pass through while in checking? Talking about 1 liter. I'm going to take this one. I'm so sorry.
Yes,
he specifically asked twice to ask Pingal this question, but I'm going to take this one. Please. Then Pingal, you can sum it up.
Sure.
So the question, part 1, whether it's a vape liquid with flavor, without flavor, with nicotine, without nicotine, doesn't matter. If it's a vape liquid, it's not allowed. First thing. Second thing, what are the chances it will pass through while in checking? It's 1 liter. If it gets caught, you're royally screwed, just for the record. But the chances are probably infinity divided by 0. See, how we can't really calculate that. I'm really sorry. Probability isn't our thing right now. It's not allowed. And if you get caught with 1 liter of that liquid, you're going to be in trouble. That is all we can tell
No,
you.
and to clarify, when Kanav said royally screwed, he didn't mean royalty. You know, you'll be the king of it.
Also,
That's what.
Kanav, if I may ask, did the person, the querist, did the person actually ask whether it's 1 liter of flavorless nicotine liquid?
Yes, his exact words were, quick question. What if a friend is bringing flavorless liquid with nicotine from abroad? What are the chances it will pass through while in check-in? Talking about 1 liter.
First, 1 liter is a problem. I will not get into that. You have already addressed. But liquid nicotine is the biggest issue in all of this. Liquid nicotine, even before the prohibition of e-cigarette, was the root issue that the government raised first up, saying liquid nicotine is something that is regulated. It is only meant for certain companies which can be given licenses. And in certain states, and it is a banned substance in many states under the Poisons Act. So that raises a whole other bunch of questions. I mean, liquid nicotine, how you have issues even with 50 ml? I mean, I think that's just plain illegal.
I fully agree, though I believe what he meant in his question was with nicotine inside the flavor. Well, I think what he was trying to say was that the liquid is flavorless, but it has nicotine inside.
Right. And that's the
Wording was a
problem.
little confusing.
That would amount to basically bringing in liquid nicotine from the perspective of the law.
Yes. But either which ways, any of these scenarios, any possible permutation combination which you want to play of this and any probability which you want to calculate, the idea is a bad idea. The probability of you getting into trouble if you get caught is definitely 100%.
Okay.
And you've added a follow-up thing that it's 1 liter in 2 bottles. It could be in 10 bottles. You could make it in any combination. Like I said, it doesn't matter what combination you play with. It's the sum total of what you're doing is going to get you into trouble.
Kanav, I think you just found yourself a new job. Fingal is just going to hire you out of this conversation.
Fingal, I'm available. Let's do it.
You're available?
Yeah, during the lockdown, I'm available for a lot of things. I don't want to elaborate on it right now.
No.
Why are you interested in
Hang on, Dhaval. Let's not get corny here, okay?
Just for the record, today certain people are watching who would not probably like me saying inappropriate things like I'm available. I just realized later. You're most welcome, Ashid. I'm going to totally deviate from the discussion which was happening now and go somewhere else altogether. Anybody has anything fun to play? I'm going to play the cricket sounds now. So
ran away.
Yeah, I'm coming to Mridul only actually as of right now. There is a question by Biker Abhinav who says, how can we help as vapers in pushing the government in the right direction? Abhinav, first, there are a lot of things which you can do. You can follow us on a lot of these social media platforms which we are now present on. Most importantly, you can join us for every one of these live streams because we'll be updating you, telling you anything and everything which you can do for us or help us with. But most importantly, I think Mridul has a message today. Mridul, is that correct? Are you going to be taking the show over for a bit right now?
Yeah, thanks, Kanav. So one of the things that we kind of have been working on at AVI is we think there's a need for a unified database of vapers in the country. What is the idea? So basically, we currently estimate that India has about 10 lakh vapers, but it remains just that, an estimate. Why? Because we don't know for sure. This projection is, comes from all the different sources of information that we have. The AVI website, all the Facebook vaping groups, WhatsApp groups, Twitter following, etc. But when it comes down to actual data that we have and that we can utilize, it's a few paltry, hundreds. So we kind of think that, building a unified database of the Indian vaping community group by states and cities will help us a long way. So this is the initiative, and why are we doing this? Few reasons that I would like to, point out. One is community building. One of the visions that we at AVI have is to build vaping communities in cities. There can be casual meetups where, you discuss what is new on the vaping scene, why does spitback occur, how to fix a broken vape, etc. A database of, vapers would help also identify areas or regions with high or low vaping activity, which then means that AVI can direct resources and programs more effectively in those areas. The second reason why we would think of a database of vapers is communication. With a unified database, we can reach out to everyone, right? Communication is essential to a thriving community of vapers. So currently there is no way to, there's no unified way to reach the lakhs of vapers in India. We all have questions, right? What happened to that court case we filed? What is the latest on legislation around vaping? What is the WHO stance on vaping as an effective tobacco harm reduction method? If there was a unified database, we could periodically reach out to the folks, right? And you would hear the communication directly from the horse's mouth. So that's two. The third reason why we think a unified database is a great idea is legislation and media. So as AVI, when we represent vapers of the country, we need to talk with strong numbers. Data is strength. If in the future we get a chance to open discourse with the government, the first question is going to be, how many Indians do you represent? Truth is, we don't know. We estimate 10 lakh vapers, but the truth is we don't know. And the same logic applies to making our presence felt globally through social media. So that was another point. And then the last thing I wanted to say is research and studies, right? I mean, tomorrow if there's a group of medical body or a bunch of individuals who are willing to do a research on tobacco harm reduction and the role of electronic nicotine delivery systems in that, this database would be a way for us to give your information to those researchers, of course with your consent, and they could reach out to you. Now, that's pretty much it. It summarizes this idea that we have and why we need to build this unified database. One thing I wanted to address is, of course, this is data and you guys would have concerns, right? I mean, is my data safe? What is AVI going to do with this database? Is my data going to be distributed to telemarketers? No. We at AVI strongly believe in data security and privacy, and we will not share this information with any third party for any promotional purpose. This data is going to be encrypted and is going to reside in a secure server, and we inside AVI will have a team of maybe 2 or 3 people who will have access to this data. So don't worry about your data, not being secured. That's a given.
Midul, if I may just add one point, which and it just came to me because I've heard this question before at various meets or when I've met friends who are vapers. One thing that needs to be clarified to everybody right now in India who is vaping, who has been vaping, is that vaping is not an offense. You are not an offender if you're vaping. So there should be no fear in your mind about that part. So there is no risk to a database being created because you're not an offender. Even the government accepts that vaping itself is not an offense. So that I really hope and wish that that is something that is clearly understood by every vapor, because there is a lot of social pain to be treated as an offender, to be classified as an offender. So it is very important to understand that vapors are not offenders. Vaping, the act of vaping, is not an offense. It is not an offense in any law in India. There is no intent to call it an offense right now. And it is unlikely, like I explained through legal reasons why it is unlikely. It is very unlikely to be called an offense, especially when in a country people are smoking cigarettes and biddies all over the place. So I just hope everybody understands that and they come aboard and they help in, because I think part of what AVI tries to do is educate education here is both with the authorities and with general public, because there is a lot in the general public also who have this whole thing about it is very harmful, it is more harmful, less harmful, what if teens smoke it, all of that. And it will only help if a lot more people come in with their life experiences, with their benefits they have got, and help AVI make that movement happen.
Yeah. Thanks, Pingal. That's a very good point. And
to cap it off, I would just like to say that there is a form which Arun will put out in the chat now or sometime around now. It's a form which you can fill. It's a form which you can ask your friends to fill. Just if you just made a decision to get 10 people to fill the form, and those people make 10 other people fill forms, we'll soon have the database. And it's as Mridul has pointed out, this is key. You know, for a lot of our work, it is important that we know our vapers. We know where they are. We know the distribution. We know what, you know, I mean, some basic contact details which will help us build the movement, and it's quite key.
I would like to add something to what Samrat just said. Now, in fact, you may not even be a vapor, but you may believe in your right to choice. Okay, you may believe in your right to a safer alternative. You may believe in a right to choice. And if you are such a person, I think even you should come on board, because that's what this is about. It is about a freedom of choice. It's about a freedom of a safer alternative. Freedom to choose a safer alternative, and that is something that is what this advocacy group is all about. And I would encourage you to also sign in. Say, I'm not a vapor, but I believe in your cause, and I do support you. That's the kind of thing that we would be looking for, really.
Yep.
Right to choice. It has been accepted now, and I think it's been accepted by Supreme Court on multiple occasions in recent past that even whether it is proven beyond doubt or proven up to a government standard to be less harmful or not, the point is that the right to choice, so long as it is not more harmful, has to be respected. And that is something that needs to be brought up again and again. And one thing that Samrat, you mentioned at the beginning of this Facebook live, on this live, is that the government should allow for studies. Stifling scientific studies is the worst disservice that can be done to a modern society, and that should not happen one way or the other. It's not just about e-cigarettes, but we will never know what are the pitfalls of e-cigarettes, what are the benefits, if we are not allowed to make scientific studies and publish them.
Raj in specific wants to know if AVI has a message for people who are hesitant to show up to participate, especially for because vaping is banned. You spoke about it a little bit, but if you could elaborate a little bit more, because he's saying that people are staying underground purely because vaping is banned. So do you have any specific message for them? I know you explained it, but can you give them in simple words why they should just not be scared of it, something like that?
Now look, first and foremost, is it a legal offense? The answer is no. Vaping is not banned. This is the biggest mistake we are making. There is no vaping ban. There is a manufacture sale of vape device ban. There is no ban on the act of vaping. So please, as a vapor, do not consider yourself as an offender. You are not. There has been no prohibition on the act of vaping. So in absence of a government statutory prohibition on act of vaping, what you would find are places saying that here you cannot vape or there you cannot vape. And just like a normal smoker, you may have to avoid vaping in those places. It is also my advice, and though it's nothing to do with the law, is that it may be a good idea from a purely public relations perspective to not vape in meeting rooms and places like that, because that itself, to the pure non-smoker, sometimes becomes an issue of morality, not necessarily an issue of health. It becomes a cultural issue for them. And when you're running a movement, you need as many people to understand you, if not necessarily empathize with you, as you can. So there is no point doing confrontationist things, but it is not a crime, it is not an offense, it is not even a social disorder. So please You do not be afraid of either joining the database that Vidul spoke about, or joining any kind of movements. It's your right. It's guaranteed under the constitution. And we did, AVI did quite a few movements across cities, right, Kanav? I don't remember any obstacles being created by cops or anyone being stopped, at least not in.
We were perfectly comfortable. We had no problems. We did it within the legal rights, and we did it very peacefully, and it was very nice.
Yes. So therefore, I don't see why people are scared or why people think it's some kind of a stigma. It's not.
And that would also apply for advocacy, right, Pingal?
Yes. And Kushal Appa has pointed out that the thing is, vaping is still a taboo in India. No one is ready to risk it going through a police case followed by a court case and then the family issues that follow. That's the problem. Sometimes our country is a very close-minded about a lot of things. Even sex is taboo in our country, and we're the fastest growing population right now. So yeah, you guys really need to stop being hypocritical over here.
One thing is that there is a need to maybe help talk to the families. I mean, dealing with police and all, there are professionals to do it, but I think there is a need to talk to families. I mean that could make a person feel very lonely, if especially he's trying to quit smoking cigarette and moving to vaping to use that to quit cigarettes, which is the intent typically of using vapes. That could be a very lonely place to be in if the family doesn't understand that point. So maybe.
But Pingal, we have almost a vast majority of vapers are closet vapers. In fact, the families were not even aware that they were smokers once, who have switched to vapes and are now vapers. And so that kind of real problem does exist. And, so that is something we need to watch out for. And I don't know how we can come around that. I guess it would be, man up and own up and say, hey, I used to smoke, but now I'm using a safer alternative. I think that would be the message you need to send out to your family and your folks. Well, they may not all agree, but reality is that it is safer. I know I have a whole lot of friends who still think that it's bad and it's terrible and I should quit and so on and so forth. But I know I have nicotine dependence, and what I need is I'm having a safer alternative, safer way to get my nicotine into my system. So that's really what it is.
Right.
I would like to add something here. So when I initially started vaping, my folks knew I used to smoke. Everyone knew I smoked. I started smoking at a really early age. But leaving the whole picture aside, even my family doctor was of the opinion that vapes are not safe. And I've come across a lot of people since I traveled so much, flying in and out, in and out. It so happens to be sometime or the other you're sitting next to a doctor and you strike up a conversation with someone, and most of them are still of the opinion that it's still unsafe. And it's very, very, very difficult to convince them that no, maybe your opinion is wrong. You need to go through these set studies. But it takes a lot to change their mind. Any way in which we guys as AVI can help to educate these doctors or people of the medical profession?
Pratik, I'll quickly answer that. So there is effort on that front happening. There is a medical body which is looking at harm reduction as general, which is formed, and they are beginning to start work, and they will undertake a bunch of research in this field. So yes, that is something which Dhaval is also involved in, and I know it's an important area that we need to sensitize the medical professional about harm reduction in the tobacco space. Because while harm reduction is well accepted in other addiction treatments, in tobacco, it's more moral. Ki yaar itna hi hai to chhod do. They don't understand that it is also a dependence which needs to be treated like dependence, not like a moral issue. Dhaval, if you want to add something, please go ahead.
No, I think that covers everything, because the more sensitivity we bring to medical professionals and the medical fraternity overall, the easier it will be for us to legalize vaping, is what I believe in. So, we would have doctors and other medical professionals shouting at the government that, I want my patients to quit, but they have a nicotine dependency, and I would want to prescribe vaping or any other harm reduction device or mechanism, so that they can still get their nicotine, but not be getting damage from that. So that is one of the projects coming up this year from a AVI perspective.
Pingal, I think it's time to wind up slowly. One question is, could you tell us what is happening with the court cases in this space? Someone was asking about the Calcutta case, what's happening in Delhi, and what you're recently doing in Bangalore.
So in Bangalore, there is a challenge that has been filed by a couple of individuals who were stopped from carrying e-cigarettes in the aircraft. The crux of the challenge is based on the legislative competence or the quasi-legislative competence of the DGCA, and that is pending. It was just filed before the lockdown, so that should start go through the objection stage and come up for proper hearing once the lockdown is over. I understand that right now nothing in the I don't think any finality of out in or there.
Pingal, your voice is cracking a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, wait. The phone may have been closed. Hello?
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't think there is any finality of decision or even interim orders or any note either of Delhi High Court or the Calcutta High Court. And the main issue right now is that, look, the problem, and we need to understand the problem from both sides, because we are trying to explain to the government what our problems are. We also need to be able to somehow see how the government and maybe even the judiciary may look at the issue. And the thing that the government or judiciary looks at the issue as is very much the way the family often looks at the issue, as Jagdeep was saying, which is, this is smoking. We don't want to bring in another form of smoking. And that is the first reaction. That is often the prima facie reaction. So now the government has in some ways come to the point that, hey, we are not going to get into the habit of it. We will ban the manufacturing and all that. And this is where the issue is, that when we go to court as users and say, hey, you have said you have not banned something, but there is no way I can even get the device because you have stopped every way of getting the device. So have you not banned using? Then it is possible for the judiciary to start seeing it not as a usage issue, but as an attempt at helping with manufacturing. So the problem is that the challenge to this statute, what the statute effectively does is it impinges upon the personal right to use, but it does so without declaring it as such. And any attempt to alter that view can be viewed as an attempt to promote manufacturing, which is definitely not the intent. So this is something that needs to be brought out, and something where a lot more concerted effort will be needed to challenge it. I would say even write to the government at these points, and then maybe see how this issue can be addressed and regulations can be brought in. But right now there are no final of the orders in any of the courts in India, and I don't think any of them are in the immediate couple of months going to be considered emergency or urgent issues. So maybe we should see some movement again in July, August.
If I was to ask you a blunt question, legally, how long do you think it might take to overturn a ban like this?
It can. It's a, you know that we were doing fine till 1980s on weed, right? And then slowly we started banning it. So once a ban happens, and overturning can take time based on the speed at which research comes out and that research takes some kind of a hold over the general population of the medical profession. So why are we even today discussing medical marijuana? Because a significant fraction, a significant portion of the medical community believes it works. So that is the critical thing. The advantage, though, is that I don't think we should go back in history to see how long it takes to overturn a ban. We should actually see how fast things move today. In history, those studies used to take 20 years to come through. Today, it doesn't. So there is a high likelihood that in maybe a year and a half, you could be able to make the government see that this is an evolving position. And while no one is saying you should allow e-cigarettes like lozenges and lollipops, of course not. You should only allow it with significant regulation. But at least those regulations could be brought in. So that is a view that could be reached. Definitely. I mean, yeah. So for me, the secret is in engaging with the medical community as much as possible, because that's where the government will take its cue from. Any government will take its cue from.
And one question from me, Pingal. Do you have any, I would say, do's and don'ts that us vapers can do or not do for that matter? Do you have any suggestions, tips?
Such time the DGCA notification is not struck down, please don't carry a dismantled or complete device. That is the first thing, because unnecessarily you may be missing flights, you will be getting harassed. It doesn't make sense. Second is, do not store up a lot. I personally don't see a problem with DIY, even though I am not promoting it. I'm not saying, oh, you can go ahead and do DIY, but I don't think manufacture, the word in the statute, includes DIY right now. And I have explained before why. Other than that, I would say just don't vape in public places where you would not smoke, because then that, like I said, creates some kind of a cultural friction. It gives, let's say, cops a chance to harass you. The cop can stop you on the road and say, oh, why are you vaping on the road like this? And vaping is banned. And then you got harassed. Half your business day could be doing this in the middle of a business day. Half your business day is lost. Yes, there are laws and you will get out of it. But that time, the time you will lose will be bad. So the smart thing is that you follow the same rules. You go to a smoking zone and smoke, use a vape. You vape inside your house. You vape in the smoking area of your office. You follow the same rules that a smoker does. While the society and the cops and the system gets hang of the new prohibition, understands the boundaries drawn in the prohibition, understands that usage is not banned completely, and the cop cannot really harass. Having said that, please remember Section 4. Point out to any cop who comes and tries harassing you that usage of e-cigarettes has not been banned anywhere. Tell them the law, and typically the beat cop on the street will walk away because he typically does not know the law.
So, Pingal, this brings me, since we guys keep bothering you and consulting you, and you are helping AVI with a lot of this legal thing, and you are fighting this battle with us, we've been schooled by you about what we as AVI can do or not do, right? And we are faced with a lot of these awkward questions at times, which people throw at us. Where can I get stuff from, or what can I do, or how did you get this, or how did you get that, or how do you make this, or can you give us a DIY video, or can you, all those things, can you give us a brief summary of do's and don'ts for AVI so that we can share with our entire community? Today we see a lot of people have joined us. They've been following us regularly. I see a lot of common names which have been popping up again and again. Thank you guys for being regular, but please listen to what Pingal says are the do's and don'ts for AVI, what we as AVI can do or cannot do.
Okay, the first thing I would say, there is a huge distinction between promotion and advocacy. What AVI intends to do, in my understanding, and I've been with Samrat and working with him for several years now, is that AVI intends to engage the authorities, engage the legislators, the government, explain the policymakers, the medical community, bring on board studies, and basically create awareness so that we can go towards a better, more equitable regulated regime. That does not mean at any time AVI represents anybody who is not a vapor today. AVI represents, in my understanding, people who are vaping today on their own. The organization does not tell anybody go vape. That is not the idea. The second thing is, in line with that and in line with the ban on advertising and promotion, in my opinion, not only AVI, nobody should be making DIY videos. Because while making something for yourself may not be covered by the statute, like I said, it is going to be very difficult to explain why you made that video. That would be sort of a promotion, right? And that wouldn't remain advocacy. So that is very important, that no DIY videos cannot be made, and too bad. I mean, you just have to figure things out yourself, I guess. But AVI cannot be responsible for teaching people how to vape, because AVI does not encourage people to become vapers or otherwise. Third thing is that similarly, we have to be very careful in explaining to everyone that while vaping is not an offense, there are certain risks to stalking, and those things have to be kept in mind. And I think other than that, while we are doing this kind of videos, we must behave in a certain way where we don't promote vaping, or rather promote vaping or use of vapors. So that's basically it. I mean, I don't think there is anything else.
Pingal, I have a point to add to that one. Now, what we definitely do not do is encourage someone who is not a smoker to pick up a vape. Definitely, we do not encourage that. We definitely do encourage smokers to switch to a safer alternative, which is vaping. That's what we encourage. So I would like to clarify that there is a little bit of a distinction in what is it that we do. We definitely believe that vaping is a relatively safer choice compared to smoking, and so that's what it's all about.
But Jaggi, my understanding is that AVI is a representational organization. It represents the interest of existing vapers. It's not an organization that tells somebody that, oh, you're a smoker, you should quit and vape. We are not getting involved in your personal choices. But if you made the personal choice, we believe that yes, it is a safer bet. Yes, we do believe that, based on studies, not some kind of a faith-based opinion, and independent studies which we have no direct or indirect connection to. But we do not tell somebody go become a vapor. That is not the understanding of AVI. AVI is a body that represents the interests of vapors, particularly with regards to communicating and educating the government and the society in general.
Okay, I guess that brings me to the fine line. It's a very fine line. Standing by the side of the lake, looking like an idiot and fishing. It's really a fine line, I guess. Yeah, perhaps you do have a point there. Yeah.
I'm going to be very, very, sorry you guys, but I'm going to have to interrupt. I'm very sorry I have to interrupt you guys, but we've had a longer session today than most days, and I firmly believe that we guys should keep it a little contained and within certain time limits, so that people who are giving us their time coming and watching our stream, we're very grateful to. They don't get bored of us. Too much of things can be really boring. Though Pingal evidently is so entertaining that in 1.5 hours I didn't get bored actually, and we had enough going on. Thank you, Pingal, for joining us today for that. So we're going to start building towards closing down now. So final closing thoughts, people. Anyone who wants to say something? No, this is the last time you're going to say this. You don't get to say again after we've said your byes this time. Anyone who wants to start saying their bye?
Please fill those forms that Arun has sent out, guys. Thank you.
Right. That was Mridul.
I would like to thank Pingal for coming on this live stream, and not just that, for being with advocacy, consumer vaping advocacy right from the start, and his inputs, and always, being honest with his directions. Usually what happens is when you speak to lawyers, they promise you the moon, "Arey, ho jayega, everything is fine." Pingal is one guy who will tell you it is what it is, and he will give you a straight on opinion. And I really appreciate that. Thank you, Pingal, for being associated with us, for doing a lot of pro bono work for us, and we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Samrat. It's always a pleasure.
I'd like to add something. So advocacy, all of us are just volunteers here. No one's really drawing a salary or anything of that sort. But the legal process does take a lot of funds out of our pocket, and we are really short on funds. We need to build a really, really huge war chest, and with the way things are going, it's moving really, really slowly, more slower than what we would like. So if you guys can help support us by donating, that'd be really, really awesome. And secondly, if you guys have any ideas which you can run by us for a fundraiser of some sort related to something which we are doing, that would be also really appreciated. That's about it. Thank you, guys.
Thank
you. Manish, Jaggi.
Well, I'd like to say that this is the third time I've come on the show. So. No, guys, thank you. Thank you all for coming and really adding, value to this and substance. It's really not very easy to keep a show going, and considering that we have actually hit an hour and a half, this show shows that there is growing enthusiasm and a lot of participation from the audience, which is really appreciated. Thanks, Pingal, for being forthright with your answers on that one. And I do look forward to more involvement from every one of you going forward. I guess that would be my closing remarks for this one.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Pingal, especially for joining today's panel discussion, live stream. And a big thank you for all the people who have actually watched us live, because this is for you. We wouldn't be sitting here and chatting amongst ourselves unless you were watching. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me here. And sorry, Kanav, that we took so long. As a lawyer, I tend to be a little fond of my own voice.
Oh, no. You were a pleasure, and thank you so much for being here. It was great. I'm sorry that I have to cut it short, but while we're still figuring this out and it's new for us, like we said, this is the third time we're doing the stream. We're still taking feedback from people non-stop, and we're trying to figure out what is the right duration for this kind of a show, so that we don't lose the interest of the people who are watching. So that's why we're trying to time it and keep it. And I have to, unfortunately, since I'm the one, I don't know, kind of like anchoring the show, so I have to be the one who has to crack all the bad news to people at times. I was in the flow and could have gone a couple of more hours. I've met you once. You're a fantastic person to spend time to and talk to. Actually, I think I met you more than once. Now, come to think of it, yeah, I've met you.
Yes, almost twice.
And every time we run out of time, we have so much to talk to. So yeah, but
no, normally Pingal says, normally he never forgets a face, but I guess in your case he made an exception. So yeah. I don't know why,
He's just jealous, he knows everyone hears from me. They've come here
today. You're both great speakers, I must tell you that. You both speak really well, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. That's a huge compliment coming from Samrat, right?
Yes, big one.
No, I genuinely believe that. Okay, so Jaggi, one last joke before we go, or what?
We can't hear you.
Okay. Okay, it's not really a joke, but it's one of my real life incidents, right? Okay, this has happened when I was about 9 years old. My dad insisted that I go to a funeral of one of his friends. I'd never seen that man before, but he insisted. So I went to the funeral. I was, sitting in a corner waiting, and then this one man walked up to me and said, "Enjoy life, my boy. These time flies. Look at me. I never enjoyed it," and so on. And gave me all the spiel, and then he rubbed his hand over my head and went off. And minding my own business, and just before my dad left, he said, "No, you must come and see the face of the dead person and say goodbye to him." And so I went there, and I was shocked, right? Because the man who was talking to me was down there in the coffin, okay? And that gave me trauma for years, okay? Psychiatrist help, I kept getting nightmares and psychological disorders. I was terrified of being alone. And then I finally discovered something that changed my life forever. That idiot who died had a twin. True story, guys.
Epic. All right. Then on that note, I think we guys should start signing off now. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your continued support. I hope you've learned a lot today. Thank you so much, Pingal, for so much knowledge and information which you've given today. And most importantly, thank you for letting everyone know that we get lectured, scolded, checked, and corrected and schooled by you for everything wrong which we do. We are not making up the rules which we are following by ourselves. We actually have legal people and doctors. We consult professionals, and now we have proof, so you people know that we're not just saying things for the fun of it.
Yes.
Thanks, Pingal.
In all the years of knowing ABI, they've never got the law wrong. Never. And they're one of the most compliant places I've ever worked with.
Thanks, Pingal. I'm hiding all my
Thank you, Pingal. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Signing off.
All right.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Everybody sing that shit.